When the, I just need to know how fast to get up. Okay.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to those of you who have gathered here in the building and those of you who are gathering online. We're glad to have everybody with us today. Our COVID level is still in yellow, so that means we get to sing again, and masks are optional and all those good things. So I'm just looking forward to it turning to green. I don't know about you, but that day is going to come fairly soon. Wanting to let you know that our paper ritual question for today is, what are your hopes and dreams for the future, for your future and for the future of Plymouth? Also, we're going to have communion, so get your morsels of food and drink. Or if you don't have one of these, did you get some of these? Okay. And if you don't have papers, we've got some up here that you can get later, or you can go into the narthex and get your papers to write on. Let's see, what else? Palm Sunday, Good Friday, Easter Sunday, Holy Humor Sunday. All those things are coming up. You should come. They're going to be fantastic. Check our app, our Facebook page, and Thursday's Thoughts for details about all of those things and for opportunities to volunteer, because you want to help, right? Yes, you do. That I didn't get as enthusiastic of a response for. But I know you do in your heart of hearts, so hopefully there'll be time for that. And let's see, I think that is all the housekeeping we need to do. Now let's take a deep breath and bring ourselves fully to this time and to this place. Over the course of the days that we live, there's a lot of times where we feel like we need to hide ourselves or conceal ourselves. And that can lead from just a small moment to eventually feeling some kind of overall need to hide from ourselves or from God's self. And so as we breathe today and we think about our week, I want you to get into your body and think about those times where you felt like you needed to hide some aspect of your body. Maybe it's a disability that you have, a sickness. Maybe it's a pain, an ache. Maybe it's something to do with how your body is shaped, and you feel like you need to hide that. Now, there are times when we make choices that are very good to conceal, but right now I want you to open up your bodily self, your physical aspect, to holy love, and to let holy light shine on your physical self, knowing that you, all of who you are, is good and created by God. Sometimes we feel like we have to hide our thoughts. And maybe sometimes we should. Be prudent on how we're saying what we're thinking out loud. It's good to have control. That's one of the fruit of the Spirit, is self-control. But sometimes we camouflage our thoughts so much that we're not sure what we're thinking, and we don't know if God would love us if we thought a certain way. And that's just not true. So this morning, as you think back on the previous week, open up your mind to holy light and holy love. And let that light shine on your thoughts in a welcoming, kind, generous way. We have emotional responses during the course of our week, in the midst of our days. And sometimes we think if anybody knew how I felt right now, it could be a disaster. And it could be for any number of reasons that you think that way. Take a breath. Feel those feelings. Let holy love and holy light shine on your emotional aspect. And know that once again, sometimes we're called to self-control, but never to shame. Allow the emotional aspect of yourself to be lifted up. And know that even as you're working through things, you're being guided, and that you are good and sacred and wonderful. Spiritually, sometimes we hide things. Do I think about God right? Do I pray right? Do I walk through this world in my faith? Maybe we want to hide our spirits because we don't think that they're shiny and pretty enough. We don't think that they're strong enough. And that's just not true either. We can have all kinds of questions and doubts. As a matter of fact, I think our faith demands our questions and our doubts, and it demands us to wonder. Be grateful for all of the complexity of your spirit and your faith. And know that you are not judged by holy love for the way that you practice. And at the same time, you're encouraged to expand in the ways that you are gifted, in the ways that you're called. So breathe into this moment in all these aspects of your being. Remind yourself that holy light and holy love shines on you to approve and to call you good and to encourage you along to the next step and to the step after that, into the future. Let us take another breath as we bring ourselves fully to this time and to this place.
Please join me in the responsive call to worship. We rejoice in the divine as we make our way through this Lenten journey. In the desert, our thirst is quenched from the stream of God's presence. We each walk our own journey as led by the Spirit.
I did forget to mention that we have instruments in the back, so anybody who wants to go grab an instrument back there can. We've got another song later in the service that you can play for. Let's join our hearts in prayer. Holy love, you know our hearts, you know our days. You know that we know how wonderful you are. Help us. Help us to live that truth and to walk in this world with you as our companion, naming you as we name you, and knowing that we're on this journey together with you and with one another, and that we come from a long, long history of a people journeying, doing the absolute best that they can. Today, as we examine our hopes and our dreams for the future, birth within us the wisdom that you would like us to have so that we can continue to make a difference, that we can struggle with you, and we can rejoice with you and with one another. And because we choose to do this work in your company, in the company of each other as a fellowship, we lift up our voices saying these common words of prayer. Loving God, lead us beyond ourselves to care and protect, to nourish and shape, to challenge and energize both the life and the world you've given us. God of light and God of darkness, God of conscience and God of courage, lead us through this time of spiritual confusion and public uncertainty. Lead us beyond fear, apathy, and defensiveness to new hope in you and to hearts full of faith. Give us the conscience it takes to comprehend what we're facing, to see what we're looking at, and to say what we see so that others hearing us may also brave the pressure that comes from being out of public step. Give us the courage we need to confront those things that compromise our conscience or threaten our integrity. Give us, most of all, the courage to follow those before us who challenged wrong and changed it, whatever the cost to themselves.
Each week, we collect 2 offerings. One is for the church, which goes into our general fund for the running of the church and our ministries. The second is the loose offering, which is sent to a designated charity, which changes each week. If you've brought your offering in person today, you're welcome to drop it in the offering box in the back. It is the glass church near the doors to the narthex. Today's loose offering goes to the UCC Child Sponsorship Program. Since 2015, Plymouth has been sponsoring a young boy named Para. His nickname is, Para. He lives in India with his mother and grandfather, and he attends the King's Matriculation School. It costs $360 per year to sponsor him, and Plymouth plans to continue this support until he is 18 years old. He was 8 years old when we began. This year, 2022, he is 15. The UCC Child Sponsorship Program is a special ministry through the National UCC Wider Church Ministries, and 100% of the money we give goes directly to Paru. The National UCC underwrites all administrative costs. For more information about Paru, please contact the church office. We encourage letters, writing from anyone within our congregation throughout the year. If you would like to give to the general fund, to the loose offering, or to both, you can use bill pay from your bank, send us a check, use the Plymouth app, or use PushPay according to the directions on your screen. As always, thank you for supporting Plymouth and the ministries of the loose offering. Please join me in the responsive offertory prayer, which was written by Reverend Joanna Harroder. God of the journey, we give these offerings in gratitude. We give these offerings in faith. We give these offerings in hope. And with these offerings, we give ourselves. The biblical witness, 1 Corinthians 3, verse 10 through 17. According to the grace of God given to me, like a skilled master builder, I laid a foundation, and someone else is building on it. Each builder must choose with care how to build on it. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one that has been laid. The foundation is Jesus Christ. Now, if anyone builds on the foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, the work of each builder will become visible, for the day will disclose it, because it will be revealed with fire, and the fire will test what sort of work each has done. If what has been built on the foundation survives, the builder will receive a reward. If the work is burned up, the builder will suffer loss. The builder will be saved, but only as through fire. Do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy that person. For God's temple is holy, and you are that temple.
Our contemporary witness this morning is a poem written by Amanda Gorman, and it's called The Shallows. Touch deficit and light-starved we were, like an inverted flame, eating any warmth down to its studs. The deepest despair is ravenous. It takes and takes and takes, a stomach never satisfied. This is not hyperbole. All that is gorgeous and good and decent is no luxury, not when its void brings us to the wide wharf of war. Even as we stand stone still, it's with the entirety of what we've lost, sweeping through us like a ghost. What we have lived remains indecipherable, and yet we remain, and still we write. And so we write. Watch us move above the fog like a promontory at dusk. Shall this leave us bitter or better? Grieve, then choose. Book study. We highly recommend it, don't we, Peggy? It's a good book.
In the midst of pain, I choose love. In the midst of pain, I choose love. In the midst of pain, sorrow falling down like rain, I will wait the sun again. I choose love. I choose love. In the midst of war, I choose peace. In the midst of war, I choose peace. In the midst of war, hate and anger keep me score. I will seek the good once more. I choose peace. I When my world falls down, I will rise. When my world falls down, I will rise. When my world falls down, explanations can't be found. I will climb to holy ground. I will rise. I will rise. In the midst of pain, I choose love. In the midst of pain, I choose love. In the midst of pain, sorrow falling down like rain, I await the sun again. I choose love. I choose love.
So far this Lent, our spiritual practice as a community has been to intentionally grieve, to grieve our losses, mostly due to the pandemic. We've meditated on and expressed our griefs for ourselves, our family, work, church. Today, taking all those truths into consideration, we ask what's next. What are your hopes and dreams for your future and for the future of Plymouth? That's the question we're asking today. In Paul's letter to the Corinthians, he reminds them that they have choices that they get to make. The foundation they're building on is solid. It's the foundation of Jesus himself, that of love and grace. He also reminds them that each of them are God's temple. And when he reminds them, he reminds us. Each one of us is the dwelling place, the house, the vessel of holy love. Paul writes, God's temple is holy. You are that temple. As a holy temple, Paul teaches that it matters what we build with. It matters how we build, the patience that we have, whether or not we choose to cut corners. How we build on our strong foundation determines how long what we build will last. And that could mean many, many different things. We might think about the length of an actual ministry, but it isn't just how many years a ministry is running that makes it successful, but how long did the ministry live in the hearts of those who participated in it. And some ministries are really only meant to last a year or two. But how did that impact the people who received that ministry or who participated in it? And this goes well beyond church ministry. We build things all the time on our own. We build them together. We build them at school, at work, neighborhoods, friendships, any number of things that we build. Whether we call them successful or not has nothing to do with the span of time that we participate in them, but how they have impacted us. Our hearts and our souls determine how well they're built, not how many years, whatever, has been active. In the poem called The Shallows by Amanda Gorman, she lists these griefs about the pandemic, things like touch deficit, light, starved. She says, all that is gorgeous and good and decent is no luxury, not when its void brings us to the wider wharf of war. And when she asks the question, shall this leave us better or bitter, grieve then choose, she's responding like Paul, reminding us that we have choices that we get to make, and that how we build is as important as what we build. We've learned a lot these past 2 years. Did you know how resilient you are? Did you know how innovative you could be? Did you realize just how lonely you could get? Did you realize how deeply you could appreciate solitude? Maybe you realize that both of those things are true at the very same time. What have you discovered about yourself, about the world? How have you changed for the better? How are you struggling in brand new ways that you could never have anticipated? And what tools have you gained to better deal with life? Finally, and possibly most importantly, how have your priorities changed? Is there something you've realized throughout all of this that you don't want to lose, and that it would be so easy to get taken away because now the world is getting back to what we call normal? And we're getting more and more busy all the time, opportunities of things to attend, and just working at the office instead of at home and having to do lots more trips, and you're saying, but I found a kernel of something that I fell in love with during all this, and I don't want to risk losing it. I need to change something. I don't want to go back. Not to all of it. Okay, I want this part back. I really love that seafood joint. I really want to go back to that. Yeah, I really, really want to be able to hug my family again. I'm glad I get to do that. But I don't know that I want it all. What is it that you don't want to forget? And what is that something that you want to build on, that you learned about? Amanda Gorman asks, should this experience leave us bitter or better? Well, we know what the answer is, right? I mean, that's a trick question. Who wants to be bitter? Right, that's what I thought. We're supposed to say, well, it's supposed to leave us better. And we want to be better. But bitterness can be subtle. It can be sneaky. And it can be quiet for a while. It can hardly make a wave on our consciousness until it gets rooted so deep that it pushes through the earth of ourselves and starts to take over. This is why we took the time over the past few weeks to name our griefs, to bring out to the open for our own examination the pains that we've dealt with, the injuries that needed healing. When we bring them out to the open, they can't fester. When we shred them, that's symbolic. It's an act of letting them go so that they don't become our identity. I remember, that was a lot of decades ago, this memory. It's always surprising when it's like, oh yeah, I was in my mid-20s. Oh, how old am I now? But I was super sick. And I didn't know what this sickness was. And one of the leaders of my church at the time said, you are not your illness. This has not become your identity. You happen to be sick. Don't let this become your identity. That has moved me ever since. So our bitterness or our struggles, our challenges don't have to become our identity. And I say that knowing that our grief doesn't go away like turning on and off a light switch either. Just that we can make choices about how we grieve, even to a degree, when we grieve. Once we do that, we can start making other choices, like what direction we might want to go next. See, now is the time to do that. When so much has shifted around and nothing is quite set yet, now is the time to begin to rebuild. What was built out of straw that got burnt by the fire of the pandemic, now we can rebuild with precious gems. We don't have to build quickly either. But we do need to set our direction. And that starts with knowing our priorities. Sometimes when we build, we can no longer see the foundation that we built on because, well, we built on it. The foundation is meant to set it, right? And we forget maybe what that foundation looked like what we were building on and why. The uniqueness of moments like these is that our loss, in so many ways, is our opportunity to glimpse that foundation and to choose to clean it off, to see what it was that we were building on and why, to consider not only what's been lost, but how we might have built it better the first time, mistakes we made, and then to rebuild, either to build something similar or to say, let's go into another direction entirely, because we have the opportunity to do that. And as we think about all these things and the notion of building, I don't want us to lose the first truth that you are holy, and that whatever we build is good and important, but it starts with us. You are good. You are God's. You are precious. Start with that. Amanda Gorman says, what we have lived remains indecipherable, and yet we remain. Watch us move above the fog. And Paul reminds us that who we are is a builder with choices. All of this gives me chills of hope. God gives us gifts and talents, energies, wisdom, discernment. We are the architects of the next moment. We determine what we build and how we build above that fog. The ministry of Jesus, the Anointed One, the Christ, was to those who needed good news. He said he was anointed to proclaim release and to aid in recovery and to lift oppression. He also told his followers that they were anointed and that they were called to do the same as him. And he said, you're going to do better things than me. As we choose our direction for new ministries or to revitalize previous ministries, or as you choose your direction for life and reshaping and reimagining, know that this is the foundation that we're building on. It's a good one. All that the pandemic gave us and all that it took away from us helps to guide us toward our highest priorities. As I think about Plymouth moving forward in this new way of having Sunday services in a hybrid kind of a way and of being church together, I ask myself, who needs to hear this good news? Who's hearing bad news right now that they need to hear some good news? Maybe it's as simple as saying, you can hang with us, just as you are. And then, don't think it stops there. Because saying, you can hang with us just as you are, doesn't mean someone's going to say, oh, well, I perfectly trust you. I'm sure you're not like anybody else that's hurt me in the past. We have to prove ourselves that we aren't going to judge just who they are. And we can do that. So when I say maybe it's just as simple as, maybe it's a little bit more complicated. But we're on a solid foundation. And we have it in us because we do it repeatedly, lovingly, and gracefully, all the time. In what way do we get involved in proclamations and actions for release of those who have been held hostage to a system that's wearing them down? How can we aid in recovery? How can we lift oppression? There are so many ways to live a life of holy love and loving ministry. The foundation we build on is stable. The first direction we can choose is to build well out of a deep sense of caring for all God's creation, which we all are. What we build is definitely important. How we build, that's what's going to make it last. The how. We can choose tons and tons of things that we want to build. So long as we do it with the right direction, with the right intention, we will build it well. And that brings us to the communion table today. This is a ritual that was built so well that it has stood the test of time. How many generations has this been going on? Could I even count? Jesus was in the middle of a really, really hard time. He said he was anointed and called to bring good news to those who needed good news. And if that was his call, then when he said, when he lifted up the bread, "This is my body," he was trying to give his followers good news. In the midst of whatever else was going on, he was trying to say, here is a way I can be with you all the time. As often as you share this meal one with another, remember me, bring me into your circle. Remember the power that we shared, the power of friendship and companionship, the power of God with us always, the power of choosing our direction. He made this meal important because he decided it was good news that he wanted to share with his friends. And so I invite you to take your bread and to know that as we eat this and as we drink from the cup later, we are joining generations and generations of people who are sharing the good news that we are all anointed and that we are all called to be this body that we symbolically are sharing together. So, my friends, let us take and eat in remembrance of Christ. And so we come to the cup, this thing that he called his life force, and he used the symbol of blood, that generative fluid that we need so desperately in our body to make us go. And once again, we share this cup, remembering that wherever we go, the life force of Jesus is joining us and companioning us, gathering us together and making us stronger than we would be without this experience that we share. And so let us raise our cups and drink in remembrance of Christ. Please join me in a moment of prayer. Divine Beloved, we thank you for the sensation of the bread and the drink in our mouth and coursing through our bodies. Help us to search for those high points in this experience that we can draw upon in memory when we need them, when we feel alone, when we feel unworthy, when we feel lackluster, afraid. Help us to be in remembrance of you, certainly, but also of the fact that we've gathered together on purpose to do this together. And may it make us strong and vital and proud of each and every moment that we get to walk through in this life, being the best self that we can possibly imagine being, even when we fail. But to get up again, we count on you and each other, and we're grateful for this ritual that has lasted for so long. Amen. And now we go to our paper shredding ritual. Today, we turn that corner from what are your griefs about to what are your hopes and dreams. If anybody needs paper, there's paper up here, there's pens in the chairs. So I invite you now to come up and to shred your hopes and dreams. Not that sounded bad. But to allow the shredding of your hopes and dreams to mingle with the shredding of your grief so that it's like an ingredient that mixes it up and makes it into something new, which next week we get to dunk it all in water, saturate it, and put it on screen. It's going to be messy. You should be here. If you can come in person, it will be awesome. It could very well be a tragedy. I'm going to have a big tub here so that if I make a mess, it's not going to be too scary. But please come. It's going to be great. So I'm shredding the griefs that have been sent to me in the mail, or the griefs and hopes, whatever is here, because I don't know. I haven't read it. And I invite you to come forward as the music plays. Do you have anything for me to?
Thank you.
Sure. Before I say a prayer over the shredded paper, I just want to lift up something that I find really wonderful, and that's that Marshall can play in the key of Shredder. I could hear tonally that you had found its note.
That's Robert Schumann's fantasy. He wrote this big long piece that never gets to the home.
We're so blessed, aren't we? All right. This top is heavier than you think. Maybe you know, you're like, oh yeah, we have one of those. We bless these shreddings of paper, and we mix them up, all the griefs with the hopes and the dreams. And I know that I'm going to have more paper come in to me this week that I get to shred. And we will add that to this. And with all the strength that is symbolized on what's written in these paper, and the strength that's symbolized even in the act of being willing to shred it, I am grateful, and I ask you, Divine Beloved, to help us to remember just how strong we are, just how strong you are, and what it means for us to not only have our identity be the griefs, but also that we have hopes and dreams as well, and that they all work together to make a beautiful fabric that's going to be strong and helpful and full of meaning. According to your love, amen. And now, my friends, it is time to go from this place to whatever it is that you have next. May you go in the strength of holy love. May you go knowing that you are wonderful and that you are needed in this world. May you go in peace and as peacemakers.